Hello, and welcome to Moments in History. I'm Linda Shenton-Matchett, author, speaker, and history geek. While researching my stories, I unearthed tons of intriguing information that doesn't end up in my stories. So I've created this channel to share these tidbits with you. Thank you for stopping by to watch. As mentioned in the last episode of Moments in History about astronomer Vera Rubin, I discovered many trailblazers during my research into the 1970s for my latest release, Dial S for Second Chances. One such woman I discovered was Judith Heumann, an American disability rights activist, also known as the mother of the disability rights movement. Frankly, I was surprised I had never heard of her, despite my long career in human resources and the impact her work and activities had on various employment laws. Judith was born December 18, 1947, in Philadelphia, Pennsylvania, to German Jewish immigrants Werner and Ilse Heumann, who arrived in the U.S. in 1934 and 1935, respectively. Tragically, her grandparents, great-grandparents, and other family members were killed in the Holocaust in Germany. Reports differ, but sometime between 18 months and 2 years of age, Judith contracted polio, a disease that had reached epidemic levels, and she lost her ability to walk. The polio vaccine would not be introduced until the 1950s. Unfortunately, Judith and her parents met with much resistance in the school system, and they had to fight constantly for her to be allowed to enroll. Prior to kindergarten, the local public school refused to allow her to attend, saying she was a fire hazard because she couldn't walk. As a result, she was given home instruction for 1 hour twice a week, hardly enough to educate her. Judith's mother challenged that decision and managed to get Judith enrolled for 4th grade in a special school for disabled children. However, by high school, city policy intervened, and Judith was once again forced to receive home instruction. Well, Ilse Heumann was not called Mighty Mite for nothing. Tenacious and driven, she worked with other parents to put pressure on the school to reverse its policy. Success! Judith entered high school in 1961. From the ages of 9 through 18, she attended Camp Jened, a camp for children with disabilities located in Hunter, New York. Judith would later say that her shared disability experience there was the impetus for her work as an activist. She commented, "We had the same joy together, the same anger over the way we were treated, and the same frustrations at opportunities we did not have." She graduated from Long Island University in 1969, but while attending, she organized rallies and protests with other students demanding access to classrooms by ramps and the right to live in a dorm. In 1970, New York denied Judith a teaching license because she was once again deemed a fire hazard. The board didn't feel she could get herself or her students out of the building in case of fire. Undeterred, she sued the Board of Education on the basis of discrimination, and the newspapers had a field day with articles appearing around the nation. One headline touted, "You could be president, not teacher, with polio." Ouch. The case was settled without trial, and she became the first wheelchair user to teach in New York. She taught elementary school for 3 years. However, because of the press coverage, she received thousands of letters from disabled individuals in which most talked about their experiences with discrimination. Sparked by the mail, Judith and several friends founded Disabled in Action, which they had initially called Handicapped in Action, an organization that focused on securing the protection of people with disabilities under civil rights laws through political protests. President Richard Nixon vetoed early versions of the Rehabilitation Act of 1973, and DIA conducted a sit-in protest with 80 activists on Madison Avenue in New York City, stopping traffic. She served as a legislative assistant to the chairperson of the U.S. Senate Committee on Labor and Public Welfare, and in 1974 helped develop legislation that became the Individuals with Disabilities Education Act. The following year, she was recruited to move to California to work as the deputy director for the Center for Independent Living. She helped implement legislation at the national level for programs in special ed, disability research, vocational rehabilitation, and independent living. And during this time, she also managed to earn a Master of Science in Public Health at UC Berkeley. But discrimination still reigned in many areas. In 1977, U.S. Secretary of Health, Education, and Welfare refused to sign regulations for Section 504 of the Rehab Act of 1973 that prohibited disabled individuals to be excluded from participation in, be denied the benefits of, or be subjected to discrimination under any program or activity receiving federal financial assistance. Judith rose to the occasion and organized yet another sit-in, this time at the HEW Federal Building. Obviously unaware of her connections, Jim Califano stated that meals or medication would not be allowed in the building. The protester contacted the Lansing Street Foundation and the Salvation Army, both of whom agreed to provide food. One of the protesters was a man named Brad Lomax. A member of the Black Panthers, he suffered from multiple sclerosis. He contacted the organization, and the Black Panthers brought hot meals and snacks for the duration of the sit-in that lasted until May 4th, 1977, a total of 28 days, with about 125 to 150 people refusing to leave. Mr. Califano signed both the Education of All Handicapped Children regulations and the Section 504 regulations on April 28, 1977. Judith would go on to serve on numerous nonprofit boards, including the American Association of People with Disabilities, the Disability Rights Education and Defense Fund, Humanity and Inclusion, Human Rights Watch, United States International Council on Disability, and Save the Children. She also received many awards and honorary degrees. In 1992, she married George Panetta and lived in Washington, D.C., from where she continued to advocate for the disabled until her death in March of this year. Despite her work, she did not see herself as different. In one interview, she commented, "I call you non-disabled because the likelihood of you acquiring a disability, temporarily or permanently, is statistically very high." In another interview later in her life, she said, "Disability only becomes a tragedy for me when society fails to provide the things we need to lead our lives. Job opportunities or barrier-free buildings, for example. It is not a tragedy to me that I'm living in a wheelchair." I hope you've enjoyed today's moment in history. If you'd like to learn even more history, please stop by my blog, which is located at www.lindashentonmatchett.com. And please consider subscribing to my channel, clicking the bell icon to receive notifications of new episodes that release on the second and fourth Friday of each month. Thank you for watching, and have a great rest of your week.